Okay, let's see here. I'm going to try to go live on both my Facebook page on this phone. I'm going to put this up here. See if I can do this. And on my personal page, because sometimes I go live on one or the other and then I'm able to engage with people. But then when I post it to the other place, I don't get as much engagement. So hopefully this works. Let me see if I can figure out how to do this so I'm not looking at two places. Okay, let's see here. So I've been wanting to come on here the last couple of days, but there has just been so much emotional overwhelm and emotional feelings and rightful outrage and rightful hurt and rightful pain. And I was sitting in the bath. I have been taking a lot of Epsom salt baths since the whole beginning of the COVID thing. And I had so many thoughts racing through my head, and I am just praying for God to organize them all so that I can do an honorable job in sharing the thoughts that have been placed in my brain. So, if you are joining me, feel free to comment. I am going to do my best to try to look at both screens and answer questions, engage with people. It is my intention to create a safe place. I saw growing up that if you do not foster a safe space, you are not going to get honesty. You're not going to get healing. You're going to have people avoid you. You're going to have people not be able to communicate with you. And that is one thing that my grandma did for me. She was my safe space. She was the person who told me from the time that I was a little girl to stay strong. Those words have grown with me, and I have come to learn more and more what it means to stay strong through extensive adversity. Yesterday, I had a woman ask me what I would do in a situation because I shared my thoughts in regards to Mr. Floyd, who senselessly his life was taken from him. And everybody, I mean, most people, I think, witnessed that, and it's appalling. And I also shared on another post how in the past I was more reserved with speaking about police because I have people that I love in my life who I hope serve and protect the public and uphold that oath. And I know that is a job that is hard. I know that is a job that I personally would not want. I'm a sensitive individual. I'm an empath. There's a lot of PTSD within law enforcement. How could there not be? And in the past, I didn't speak up. One, because I wasn't convicted in my heart to. Two, I thought about the people who are those who are out there doing their job and protecting the public, and I think about their well-being. Okay, this is trying to reconnect on my page. Hopefully this reconnects on my public page. Anyway, it's going on my personal page right now. If I have to, I'll just upload it to my Facebook page. But with this incident that was caught on videotape, I could not stay silent. I was convicted to speak out. There was no way that I could stay silent to what I witnessed with Mr. Floyd. It brought me, okay, we're back. It brought me to tears. It made me sick to my stomach. There were other people at the same level of power that should have stepped in and said stop, and they did not. And the woman who asked me what I would do in that situation, I'm the type of person, I enjoy conversation. I enjoy mature dialogue. But then you have to be open to listening to other people who don't necessarily agree with you too. So it's your willingness of whether or not you're going to foster an honest discussion, an honest, safe space. I hope I'm doing a good enough job with doing these two screens. So I responded to this woman, and I'm also not the type of person, I'm at the point in my journey, I've gone through enough. I'm going to go through where I've actually acted in regards to speaking up, but I'm not the type of person who's going to fight fire with fire anymore. I have gone through way too much, and I just don't honestly have it in me. But what I share with her in regards to what I witnessed, one, if you're at the same level of power and you do not speak up, that's problematic. If you are a civilian and you see people abusing somebody, I can understand why there would be fear. And there's also what is called the bystander effect. We learned about this when my undergrad degree is a bachelor's of science in psychology. This keeps cutting out. But the bystander effect, it goes along with a case. Let me see if I can pull that up really quick. We learned about it in undergrad. Bear with me. Bystander effect. There's an article on Psychology Today, and it talks about how this woman was murdered, and there were a lot of people who witnessed this murder, and nobody stepped in. And in the bystander effect, as it talks about in this Psychology Today article, it talks about how when there are more people witnessing something, people are actually less likely to step in and help. So good thing there's video technology. Good thing that will hopefully allow for justice in today's world. Hey, Tara, thanks for joining me. I'm having a little bit of technical issues. I'm trying to go to my page on my phone and then go to my personal page on my computer. So it's kind of cutting out. It's thunderstorming here. It's been raining here in Florida all day long. So thanks for hopping on and engaging with me. And what I was just talking about was how when there are a group of people, there was a case in New York where a woman was killed. We learned about this in my undergrad psychology. When there is a group of people, it is actually less likely that someone will intervene. This woman was murdered from this case study that we learned about. And even though there were multiple witnesses, nobody stepped in to stop. And I think about Mr. George Floyd, and I think about the disgusting, senseless loss of his life. And that case came into my head, and people ask me on my page what I would do in that situation. And I can't say, I don't think anybody can say what they would do in that situation with an honest heart. When people go through trauma, including rape victims, the body's response sometimes is to freeze. I remember one time I was in, this is reconnecting on my page again. Okay, this is back. I remember one time I was in Cayman, and this is an example how your body, you may think when you're behind social media that you know how you'll act in a case like George Floyd. But let me tell you, the body, it has a fight or flight response. The body can freeze up in times of trauma. You can read on that. There was a time I was in Cayman, and we were at this little duck pond, and it said that there were unknown depths of the water. There were a bunch of turtles, and there were ducks there, and I was right next to my son, and he fell into this pond with hundreds of turtles, and I froze. And the only reason I jumped in to get him was because my husband was like, Nicole, get him. If it hadn't been for my husband yelling at me to jump into that pond with hundreds of hickety turtles, which scratch and bite, to get my little toddler that I was literally right next to with my camera on me, I would have froze. That was my body's response. Prior to that, if somebody would have asked me, my video is reconnecting on my page. Prior to that, if somebody, no, that wasn't a dream, Brandon, that was reality. I was in South Sound at the duck pond where all the ducks and the turtles are, where there used to be a lot of iguanas. But Jack, I was right next to Jack, right next to him. It wasn't like I was off doing something else, but he leaned in to feed the animals, and he fell in, and I froze. And the only reason I jumped in with my $1,000 camera that does not come close to the value of my son's life was because of the fact that my husband was like, Nicole, get him. But I froze. My little boy fell into a pond with unknown depths with hundreds of hickety turtles, and my body froze. Now, if you would have asked me, what would my response be if my son fell into a pond where he could potentially drown when I was right? It's okay, Brandon. Thanks for joining. If you would have asked me ahead of time, what would I do if I was in that situation? I'd say, of course, I would jump in. But when put into that situation, hold on, Caitlin. When put into that situation, I had no control over my body. So when I think about what happened, with Mr. George Floyd, and people didn't either. I love you too. Can you let me do my video? When people say that they would do things or what other people should have done, I think it is most honest. Let me shut the door really quick. I think it is most honest to state that you honestly do not know what you would do in that situation. Many times rape victims, they freeze. I testified last year against my former medical school dean. Last year was a crazy year. I testified that at a medical gala where there were hundreds of other people, my medical dean came up from behind me and grabbed my butt. What was my response in that moment? I turned around, I saw him, I was like a deer in headlights, and I froze. What do you do? My body didn't react the way that if somebody would have asked me, hey, if you're at a medical school gala and your dean comes up and he grabs your butt and he touches you inappropriately without your consent, what would you do? I probably wouldn't say, I'd freeze. No, I probably would. You don't know. Valerie Von Frank, you did a great job testifying. Was there? Thank you so much. Thank you. That was hard. And I shared a post. I shared a post today because I think it's really important for people on social media to understand, one, what are your expectations that you're placing on people? And also, what is that person that you're expecting you expect somebody to do something? Where is your consideration for where that person's capacity is in regards to their mental health? I've gone through a lot in my life. I have been speaking up against abuse since I was a little girl. I have experienced a lot of backlash. I've experienced a lot of loss because of that. I can see why people stay silent. I just personally have never been able to. So I wrote a little list down. Because I bring action behind what I state. I don't just sit behind a social media screen and spew whatever is on the tip of my tongue. I'm speaking with credibility in what I say. And I wrote a post on my Facebook, and I'm connected to some people who put action to their words. They're the real deal. Valerie, she knows these people too. People who stood up to an institution, who stood up to institutional abuse and silence. And that is not hard. That's not easy. That is really, 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 really hard. And you lose a lot by doing that. And let's see if I can go and just read this post really quick. So this is what I wrote. And mind you, I received an offer to have my book published with TBN. They have been publishing content for 84 years. I'm still pinching myself. I have been processing this for about 2 weeks now because I cannot believe that my prayers are being answered. With that, I understand that my voice comes with responsibility. And I realize that I am accountable for every single word that comes out of my mouth. So I do not speak lightly. And I know that there are consequences to what I say. So I shared, my phone keeps disconnecting. I think it's because of the weather here. So I shared that I'm reading on another computer now. I shared, it is much easier to have an opinion on social media than to take an active stand in person. How many times, and I'm not writing this as confrontation, I'm asking people to truly reflect, especially before asking people or having expectations of other people who may be mentally at their breaking point already. Everybody's at a really difficult place. We're in a pandemic. People have experienced a lot of loss. It's very familiar to me because I've already experienced a lot of loss in my life. But not everybody is at the same mental capacity. So some people may stay silent for that very reason. So we have to understand our own expectations, and we have to also empathize, as hard as it is. And some people, there are sociopaths, there are psychopaths. Some people are just simply not capable of empathizing. So for you to have the expectation that they're going to speak out, that's a lost cause, in my opinion. So I wrote, it is much easier to have an opinion on social media than to take an active stand in person. How many times, I'm asking you to reflect, have you stood up to injustice in person? How many times have you taken a stand in person when someone is being bullied, abused, or oppressed? Did you put yourself out there when others stayed silent? How many times have you experienced retaliation for your actions? How many people have turned their backs to you when you could have used their support? How many times have you experienced more abuse because you didn't stay silent in person? This carries much more weight than one's voice on social media. I'm challenging people to take a good hard look and reflect. People feel courage behind a screen that doesn't necessarily make it to the real world. There are deeper reasons for why people stay silent. Fear is a legitimate concern. Retaliation is a legitimate concern. Being ostracized is a legitimate concern, along with being rejected. The human body's response to fear and trauma is a legitimate consideration. And finally, prior personal life experiences are legitimate considerations as well. I'm going to talk about, briefly, I'm going to list the levels of abuse of power that my journey includes. It involves parental level and family, the level of a boss, specifically my director of medical education. It involves my medical school dean. It involves institutional levels, MSU. It involves a billion-dollar industry, my long-term disability policy and the company that I had that through. It involves a governmental level, the Cayman Islands government and their police. Let me share some of the experiences briefly and the losses, because I spoke out on each of those levels. I was hit more. I was called more names. I'm reading it now. I had people turn their backs on me. I lost my career as I knew it. I lost, by being where I was at the time of my accident, because I spoke out against abuse in medicine, I lost my health as I knew it, my finances, my mental well-being. I almost lost my life. And speaking up at an institutional level and going through national media like so many other brave young women who spoke up against Larry Nassar, and speaking up and being willing to be public with my experiences with my former medical school dean. I lost my privacy. I gave that away because I was convicted to break my silence. There was more name calling. There was more judgment. There were more people who told me to just stay silent and to let it go. In Cayman, I spoke up. There was a lot of misplaced judgment in Cayman. I spoke up in Cayman while I was there about people who were employed as helpers and nannies who were treated poorly. I spoke up about tenancy laws not being there. I spoke up about my experiences with mold, black mold, and how sick it made me, which led to us being homeless. We experienced that in 2 consecutive homes in a hotel there. I spoke up about the fact that, like so many other people, one landlord failed to return our security deposit. And then after multiple attempts of trying to handle that matter privately, I sought help online, publicly, because I was an expat. I was a foreigner. I was vulnerable. We were struggling financially because of the 8-year battle that I went through with the long-term disability company, which is a billion-dollar industry. I know what it's like to not have food in the refrigerator. And so when someone doesn't give you money that's rightfully yours, you fight for that. And because I fought for that, I faced losing my freedom in a foreign country. But I at least walked out of that country, flew out of that country with my life. But I know that fear. I think it's really important not to stereotype an entire country, an entire group of individuals. I think it's very important to understand how much someone can lose by speaking up against abuse and abuse of power. I think everybody needs to breathe. At the beginning of my journey of healing, after my accident, one of my first therapists, she shared with me that anger used constructively can bring positive change. But the key word is constructively. By stereotyping entire groups of individuals, that's not going to bring healing. It's going to bring more discord. I will never understand hatred or racism. It is certainly something that is evil. I've had a lot of spiritual experiences in my life. God afforded me a second chance at life for some God-known reason. I've been obedient to what I feel convicted in my heart to do, and He continues. I'm seeing doors open now that I prayed for a long time, for years. I think about how much loss I've experienced, how much pain I've experienced, how much hatred I've experienced. I don't want to be lumped into a group of people who don't speak up, but at the same time, I empathize with why people don't. I can tell you that when I spoke up about Larry Nassar and William Strample, and I saw so many silent doctors, it was disappointing. It was disappointing to see that so many people stayed silent. I can tell you that when I shared about my relationship with my dad after staying silent about the full extent of my relationship with my dad, I can tell you that having people not support me and turn their back to me and call me more names, that was disappointing. And it affected relationships from that time. I can see why people stay silent. Speaking up against abuse and abuse of power can come with a very heavy cost. It can cost you your freedom. Some of the greatest people of all time were jailed because they did just that. So it may be safe, it might feel safe to be behind a computer screen and to be angry into a computer screen, but you also have to be real. You have to own your words, and you have to own your emotions, and you have to own the fact that your words have consequences. Years ago, I started meditating on the scripture, being slow to speak, quick to listen, and slow to anger, and it has really helped me. And some things are overwhelming, and people have to understand that a lot of people feel overwhelmed. There are a lot of things in the world that I have learned from institutional levels. There are systems set in place based in money and power and greed. And even as a person of a principle who has fought for change, sometimes your expectations are not met with the outcome that you had hoped for. For me, that makes me realize why my faith is so important. This is a broken world. If you are a faith-filled believer, you understand that this world is broken, and it will be. And the important, what can you do? What can you do? You can be light. You can try to overpower the darkness. I have seen so within Christianity and the Bible, it talks about spiritual warfare. And I saw that on display while I was running a group in Cayman. And I have faith. It is my foundation. It has carried me through extensive trials. And I was attacked by people who were very okay with dark spiritual energy. And for me, I think it was a test to not abandon my faith and to stand firm. I ended up leaving that group. But I kept my faith. And there is a lot of pain, and there's a lot of brokenness, and there's a lot of hurt in this world. And my faith is what gets me through all of that. So I really want, healing can't come through silence. There's ethics that go along with that. And I'll share a couple articles that I came across in the comments. But at the same time, I'm nobody's savior. For me, Jesus is my savior. Nobody could save me from my pain. Nobody could save me from the institutions that cause further suffering in my life. In many of those situations, I felt like I stood alone, but I still had my faith. And it is hard and it hurts, especially when you feel like nobody's listening to you. I think so many people just want to feel heard. I just want to challenge people to understand that we don't fight flesh. There are some people, there is evil in the world, and no matter what you do, no matter how much you explain to them, they're not going to understand. And some people just don't care. Some people don't have, like I said earlier, people with sociopathic and psychopathic tendencies, they don't have the capacity to care. So what do? You do what's within your control. How can you make the world a better place? What can you actually do in action to make the world a better place? It's more than just going on social media and expecting other people to act, but what are you doing? I'm connected to a lot of people who do a lot of action. And for the rest of my life, I can't see innately how I could ever stay silent to abuse, but I'm also one person. So I speak when I'm convicted spiritually to speak. And sometimes I'm convicted to stay silent. Sometimes it's not my voice that's going to carry the weight that someone else's voice could carry. And even sharing about Mr. Floyd's death, I hesitated because I am not a black individual. God gave me white skin. And I think that the pain and the feelings of Black individuals need to be amplified. But at the same time, God convicted me to speak. And I also don't want other people to feel alone like the way I have felt in the past. And in my faith, God created all of us fearfully, wonderfully. Evil is evil. And when convicted to speak, I think you need to be obedient. So that's, I think, what I want to share. There's a lot of brokenness and a lot of pain in the world. There are systems set in place that thrive off of other people's suffering. And I think that can be very overwhelming on an individual basis. People need to speak, but they need to be able to come together. And people can't come together if a safe place is not fostered. If you want healing, a safe place needs to be fostered where people can honestly communicate without having the fear of being cut down. Because if you cut somebody down, they're going to retreat. If you don't allow for that safe place, people aren't going to come to you and be honest to you. So then basically, if you're not facilitating a safe place, all you're going to have is the projection of your voice. And that's not how healing takes place. To have emotional maturity and to be able to, one, I have learned so much about issues faced by people who God created to look different than me by the sole basis of their skin color by listening. I have family members that society would view as Black. I have friends who fit the description of a gentle giant who I love. I have friends who are white with children who fit society's outward appearance of what Black is. And the thought that any of them would be treated less by the sole color of the skin that God gave them it's something I will never understand. It is something that I saw created division in my own family from the time I was a little girl, and it hurt me. I lost out on relationships with people I loved because of something so incredibly evil, and I will never understand it. As a white woman, I don't want to be lumped in with white people need to do this. I'm doing the best that I can. I'm doing the best I can with a very overwhelming journey. I'm doing the best that I can in a broken world. And I think when people take that into account, that most people who have empathy and compassion and genuinely, for the most part, have a good heart, most people care. Some people don't know how to show more that they care. Some people don't have the mental health capacity to do anymore. Life is hard. So hopefully in what I am convicted to share, and hopefully what I felt led to write, hopefully it'll get people to pause. Just pause and think about what you say on social media and who you lash out at on social media and how you can look within and what you can do more of personally within limitations. It's very overwhelming for a lot of people, and you can lose a lot by doing the right thing, and it can be really scary. And we just have to, I think, have empathy for people at different parts in their walk in life. So hopefully I did. This is really overwhelming. hopefully I did an honorable job with conveying the thoughts that have been placed on me because I care. I think sometimes I might care too much for my own personal well-being. So let me scroll through here because this doesn't move down. Atka, I agree with you. It's not just going on social media and posting, but our actions. And I'm also in love with you for the fact you realize you can speak up while also knowing when not to speak and letting others have their time. Such a maturity to your words. So thank you. That's why I was thanking you in private. All of your words are spot on. I had so many thoughts racing through my head, and it's such a sensitive topic. In medical school, Edka, you know this, in medical school we're taught, we have classes on delivering sensitive information. But some topics are so heavy and there are so many layers and dynamics to it, and people can misinterpret your words. They can misinterpret your tone when they don't see you face to face, when they can't hear your verbal tone. My calling in life with this second chance at life, I'm not anybody's enemy. That's not why I'm here. I don't believe that's why God afforded me the second chance at life. I don't believe that's why He's opened a door where I can share this journey with the help of TBN and my book. We don't fight flesh. And like I said, I've had enough spiritual encounters where I have seen evil, and it's scary. What I saw in that officer who took that man's life, Mr. Floyd's life, I saw evil. Evil has no color. I've seen evil in white individuals. I have seen evil from videos from black individuals. One gentleman earlier today said, you don't see black individuals killing white individuals in the U.S. You do. Evil does not discriminate. And I gave specific examples, including videos, which made me sick to my stomach, just as the video of Mr. Floyd's life being taken from him. The fact that he called out for his mom makes me feel, with the spiritual experiences that I had, it makes me feel like she was there with him. There have been spiritual experiences that I've had since my dad's death that only my dad would know. And it gives me the faith that He's still with me. He still sees me. He's still looking out for me. I think Mr. Floyd's mom was looking out for him. I can only pray that she's embracing him and they're smiling together now. And I can only pray that that man gets justice and his family gets justice. I can only pray that some good comes from such evil. And that is part of Scripture. That is Romans 8:28, where even what was evil can be used for good. I can only hope and pray. Let's see if there's any. With the Facebook Live, the comments don't scroll. Hold on, Caitlin. Why am I taking so long? Because I'm talking. Come here. Let me see. Hold on.
You did that.
That's all we ask you to do the best you can. Admit you are an imperfect, flawed person. Oh, I am. I am definitely an imperfect, flawed person. Some don't do even that much. They stay stuck in the mist fed to them. True maturity is not going from extreme right to extreme left, but by knowing your values, while leaving room for growth and empathy and compassion. Tiara, you were great. I love your open vulnerability. My book is raw and vulnerable. I think that's part of my fear in walking through that door, because I have been rejected and I have experienced so much loss. To put your soul on paper and to know that's going to be published, and to know that there are people who rejected you, who may not wish well on you, there's fear that comes with walking through that open door. So I've literally been processing that for the last couple weeks. So I appreciate people tuning in, and I pray. I'm not just saying this, I pray for people. I pray for this world so often. And hopefully my voice will add some love to the world. Hopefully it will serve as some light in the world. Hopefully it will serve as a safe place, like my grandma afforded to me. So I'm going to hop off of this. I'm going to check my comments on my page. But I'm grateful for my voice. I encourage other people to express their voice. And I am grateful for the relationships that I have with people who in many ways are so similar to me, but from outward appearances are not. And in the Bible, it talks about not judging people based on their outward appearance, but by the character of their heart. And I think that is so important. I think it's so important to give people that don't look like you a chance, and to understand that we're so much more similar than we are different. So, God bless you. Thank you for listening to me. And I'll continue to... Hi, Judge Aquilina. Yes, keep talking till you are heard. You're magnificent. I love you. Judge Aquilina, powerhouse woman. And I am so grateful I got to meet you when I went to Michigan. So I have such incredible people in my life. I am...
Mama, Mimi, the too.
Yeah, Caitlin just said, Mama, I met Judge Aquilina too. Say hi. Alrighty, God bless you. Be well, stay well, and love well.